If I don't know how to read Quran now, how will I how will I pray Taraweeh at home?
SubhanAllah. I guess that's a very, very scary point. Like, we're going to Ramadan very soon, and potentially we won't have that masjid vibe, that Ramadan night vibe anymore.
Start preparing. You have 1 month. Maybe you need to jump online and learn how to, read. Maybe get on the phone with a sheikh even and say, look, fix my tajweed, fix my recitation. Whatever it is, fill your day with a'mal that are pleasing to Allah. Tawbah, repentance, istighfar, and dua, and good deeds. This will definitely change the conditions.
SubhanAllah, Sheikh. I feel like, it definitely has opened the door of opportunity. And one of the most, I think, grand things that I have personally witnessed from this episode or this experience is, never before have we seen the grandeur or the magnificence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I feel like this episode, this virus we're going through right now, it has completely withered away the delusion of mankind that we are powerful and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the king. And I feel like Allah, when He sends His signs, His sign, I guess, was very minute, very small, something which is invisible to the naked eye. And, when it was Namrud, the tyrant, the oppressor that tried to go after Ibrahim,
the mosquito.
The mosquito. Sometimes Allah will send the smallest thing just for you to realize how great He is. And I think one of the other take-home messages right now that many of us can appreciate is know your Rabb. Use this time to know your Rabb, know His greatness. Subhanallah.
Definitely. Look, there's so many signs. So many signs around us. But when we don't see these apparent signs, Allah Azza wa Jal sends clearer signs. Before, if you rewind 6 months, everyone was talking about the might of countries, armies, that was
defense,
that was you read the news, this country invented this weapon, they doing this and they doing that, and what's happening? Habibi, look what armies now. Corona. A virus you can't even see with your naked eye, 100 times smaller than a tiny little hair, and you can't fight it. How can you fight something like that? Till now, I know there's a lot of medical statements and specialists are talking, but really you find also a lot of takhabbut. There's a lot of difference of opinion. What should be done? We don't know. Should we close schools? Shouldn't we close schools? How do we deal with such a virus?
So much confusion.
So much confusion. So everything that was set in stone, strong, we were proud of, like Allah said, وَظَنَّ أَهْلُهَا أَنَّهُمْ قَادِرُونَ عَلَيْهَا. And the son of Adam became arrogant and thought he's in control. أَتَاهَا أَمْرُنَا لَيْلًا أَوْ نَهَارًا. Our order came by day or by night. فَجَعَلْنَاهَا حَصِيدًا كَأَن لَمْ تَغْنَمْ. Everything changed. Who would have imagined that America would enter lockdown? China with all the technology and this not lockdown.
Wow.
Australia and the system and the lifestyle, lockdown. Lockdown. Who would have go tell someone this 6 months ago, telling this will happen? He would think you're joking. No way, So all of these are signs. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا. Allah said we will show them our signs in the horizons, in themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches. Whoever learns. And whoever chooses not to learn and keep Allah Azza wa Jal out of the equation, he only harms himself.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. Thank you so much. Personally, what I can take home from this discussion is the fact that almost every answer revolved around the Quran. And I feel like if ever there was a time to turn back to the Quran, it's now.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, wherever you are, Adelaide, South Australia, rest of Australia, and the rest of the world, welcome back to Salam TV, episode 17, 1441 Hijri, and the initiative of the Islamic Society of South Australia for the difficult time during the COVID-19 pandemic. And the special feature of tonight, or special features of tonight, are a lot. Tonight, joining me, very special guest and a co-host as well, Professor Muhammad Abdullah, the director of Center of Islamic Thoughts and Education, and the guest only is Dr. Nadeem Memon, Senior Research Fellow at the Center of Islamic Thoughts and Education. Tonight's episode, welcome for both of them. Tonight's episode is special as well. We are probably all aware that the government, both federal and state, had made some changes to the current situation that we are living in, and in particular is there will be the issue or the ease of restriction for the use of worship place, including masjids and mosques across Australia and especially in South Australia. I will keep you updated during this episode about what the Islamic Society of South Australia will be doing and handling this ease of, or how they handling the ease of restriction, and we will come to understand what's the background behind all of the measures that we are taking currently and in the near future and in the extended future. So there will be a lot for this episode. There will be learning from the guests and the co-host from the Center of Islamic Thoughts and Education. There will be updates on the COVID-19 and the ease of restrictions and the management of masjids across South Australia that belongs to the Islamic Society of South Australia management. And there will be some sponsors videos, as well as a special section with Professor Muhammad Abdullah, as he softened our heart, always listening to him and increase our iman, inshallah. So stay tuned, and without further delay, I will go to this episode. Before I finish, I'm sure you all enjoyed last night's episodes where we had the kids to present it fully. That was an amazing episode, by far probably the best of all of the episodes. That was done before and will be done, unless they come back again, the two guys or maybe another two kids, because they were fantastic, by far better than me and other people. So congratulate them, congratulate Brother Eid and Sister Salwa, that they did fantastic job. Salma, fantastic job yesterday. The day before was as well excellent, and I will update you on what's going to be for tomorrow, after tomorrow, and Wednesday, so you can stay tuned and can stay informed and enjoying these episodes from Salam TV, the initiative by the Islamic Society of South Australia. Without further delay, welcome Professor Muhammad Abdullah, welcome Dr. Nadeem Memon.
Thank you.
Tonight, we are taking a different approach to the episodes that you've been here for before, a few days back, isn't it? But a week before.
Yeah.
Exactly a week, last Sunday. Professor Muhammad Abdullah was a guest, and he gave an overview about the Center of Islamic Thoughts and Education. But tonight is a different take, and that different take came about from the people wanted to have more information about your comments or sort of interjection during the episode with one of the management member of the Islamic College of Iqra. And that was very valuable, but we needed more, the community needed more. And we are fortunate to have Dr. Nadeem with us to take again another aspect of that. So let's get an overview from the panel, both of you, about the history of the Islamic schools and colleges here in Australia.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much for hosting us, Dr. Walid, and thank you to the Islamic Society of South Australia for having us here tonight. Maybe I can just give quickly about Islamic schools in Australia, and you might want to do something about the USA and so forth because of the similarities. Essentially, Islamic schools emerged in Australia about 1983.
Okay.
1983, if you go by the official records, some say 1986. So anything between 1983, 1986 was the first school, non-government formal Islamic school, not the madrasa. We're talking about the government school.
As an independent school.
Independent school, K to 12, first started in Sydney.
Right.
Right. And since then there has been an exponential rise in Islamic schools in Australia. We estimate, and it's an estimate, that there are about anything between 70 to 80 Islamic schools in Australia if you count the Turkish schools that don't call themselves Islamic but have majority Muslim students.
Right.
Right.
86.
We say about 70 to 80 schools.
Okay.
Which is actually, it's very small in number if you compare to, say, Catholic schools.
Yeah.
To give you an example, in South Australia there are about 103 Catholic schools in South Australia alone.
Yeah.
In Australia we have 70 to 80 Islamic schools. So the number is actually not that big, but there is an increase in Islamic schools here as well as in the USA, in Canada, in the UK.
Yeah.
So that's when they were established. And as I said, there is an exponential growth. And there is demand. There is huge demand for Islamic schools for all the good reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The two episodes that we had on Salam TV, and this is the thing, is that Salam TV is cater for, we're trying to cater for everything, as the introduction of this program saying you're going to learn, you're going to laugh, you're going to be updated, you're going to be involved. So if you have a question, please send your question through typing it on the Facebook page as you're watching us, or you can call and we get your question and we pass it on to the panel, and you can get the answer straight away. So this episode is about we, as a community here in South Australia, in Adelaide or rest of Australia, to find out more about the Islamic schools. And it comes after we had hosted, obviously, the principal of the Australian Islamic College of Adelaide and the business manager of Iqra Islamic School. So we continue with that because Islamic schools are very, very important for our community because they are it's a cornerstone in leadership, education, family members, because the kids, they live with us, they grow, and they will be the future of this community and the rest of the community. So they are very important. That's why we have Professor Muhammad Abdullah tonight and Dr. Nadeem. So Professor, you gave us the overview about these Islamic colleges here and the rest of Australia. Let's get your center is, again, it's the, many people probably don't know, it's actually, we are fortunate to have this center here in Australia. It was in Queensland. We did that overview and moved to South Australia, so we are very lucky. Not many people understand why we are lucky, and that's why we need to know why we are lucky, because this center is the center that really deal with the research about these Islamic schools, not only from the point that are they delivering the curriculum that's suitable or not, but to help that curriculum. So may you give us that?
Yeah, well, let me start the discussion, and then we'll bring Dr. Nadeem to talk about more about the type of research that we are doing regarding Islamic schools, Islamic education. So I said I spoke about when the schools were actually established, but then it's important to understand why they were established.
Yeah.
And Islamic schools, by and large, were established to, according to the research that we have done and other people have done, is to fill a very important gap in societies like Australia, and that is to offer religious or Islamic education along with academic education for young Australian Muslims, for the children of our own children.
Yeah.
And primarily it is to preserve their religious identity,
Yeah.
their cultural Islamic identity, and language, in
Yeah.
this case Arabic. And so those who did research in this field and went and asked parents, why did you send your children to Islamic schools?
Yeah.
Some of the reasons were the ones I've mentioned. We want our children to learn about Islam.
Yeah.
We want them to preserve their Islamic identity. More recent research shows that it is because it is in response to, say, Islamophobia.
Yeah.
Some parents, and remember that the majority actually of Muslim children go to non-Muslim schools. Let's remember that.
Yep.
So we're talking about this small number of, but important number that does go to Islamic schools. Some said it is because in response to Islamophobia, they were concerned about their children being racially attacked at schools or bullied because of being a Muslim. And so all of these reasons together culminated and came together to help in the establishment and the continual growth of Islamic schools. So that is essentially why they were created. And of course, they all tackle the issue in different ways. We can't say that all Islamic schools are the same.
Right.
But if you read their vision, they all seem to want to achieve almost the same thing in different ways.
Yes.
This is where our center comes in and tries to study this phenomena in depth and in details. And I'll hand it to Dr. Nadeem, maybe he can talk more about
Yeah, and I'll just add one point to that, to what Professor Muhammad is saying, is I think part of the essence of why Islamic schools were established is to preserve identity, as you mentioned. But one of the distinctions is this environment that young people are brought into.
Yes.
Right? A lot of parents will say, but can't our children learn Islam in a public school? I mean, you can have religious studies, you can have multi-faith education, they can learn about Islam.
Yep.
But what an Islamic school provides is that sense of environment.
Yep.
That place where you learn a sense of a holistic environment where your mind, your body, and your spirit, your soul is being nurtured around this concept of tarbiyah.
Yes.
Right? Tarbiyah is an essential outcome of Islamic education.
Yep.
So I think that's an important point, that the distinguishing feature.
So just, I mean, these are the points that you said that both of you now confirmed, that the research had confirmed it. That was the intention for the people who established these schools and have them as these things as a vision for them, pretty much across the board. And we'll come to it how much they delivered. But, we both obviously agree that these visions or these mission statements are really valid and important and needed. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay.
Absolutely.
Excellent. And now, then your research goes into the depth into how much of it is delivered and how much is received and received and sort of printed in the mind of the students. Can you?
Yeah, I think the research is more than just that. I think the research first trying to understand the nature of Islamic schools, but also trying to understand. I mean, some of our researchers are looking at Arabic studies in Islamic schools.
Yeah.
Dr. Nadeem specializes on the question of pedagogy, Islamic pedagogy, which is a very important concept that we need to discuss tonight.
Yes.
And for example, what are the pedagogical practices that are practiced in Islamic schools? Can there be a single pedagogy? Do we need an Islamic pedagogy? Are the teachers in Islamic schools, who, by the way, often, or in many cases, majority are from non-Muslim background.
Sure.
So to what extent those teachers and the Muslim teachers, for example, understand the Islamic philosophy of education? If we call ourselves Islamic, then to what extent is the Islamic philosophy of education being implemented in the school? To what extent are the teachers being offered the necessary training to be able to apply or implement the principles of an Islamic pedagogy or the principles of philosophy of Islamic education? To what extent is Islamic studies working? What is it that the students want from Islamic studies? What has worked and what has not worked? These are the type of issues that we are exploring.
So these are being explored and researched, right?
Definitely, that's correct.
Let's get this word pedagogy to be explained to our brothers and sisters and viewers, I guess all of them.
I'll explain it in two ways, and I think to build on what Professor Muhammad is saying is when we're thinking about what the research in Islamic schooling is saying, it is saying largely, broadly, globally, that Islamic schools have made major strides in the past 30 years.
Right.
We've grown substantially in many different ways. But at the same time, I think most schools would agree that there's something missing. And what's missing is that connection between what we envision and what we're actually doing.
And that's what we say.
And that's where Islamic pedagogy is coming in. So what Islamic pedagogy is it's not curriculum. It's not the environment necessarily, but it's the way that we teach. It's the way that a teacher approaches their responsibility in a school. And what makes it distinct, and I often say this, is that if you think about the way that we prepare our teachers to work in Islamic schools, there's no teacher education program globally that prepares our teachers for the Islamic schooling environment.
Perfect. So the question comes from the viewers before I actually came. So how we define the Islamic or the school as Islamic? Because you're telling me now it's almost like what define it to be Catholic school and what define it to be Islamic school. From Catholic, I think they do. My daughters, they went to sort of Catholic, or she's going to a Catholic, one of them going to a Catholic school or a religious school, but non-Muslim. And what they do is that they teach them the curriculum, and they have some, like a little bit of chapel attendance, or some couple of times a week. So with that, and again, obviously, I don't think there'll be nuns or priests anymore on the ground. So for the Islamic schools, what will define them? You've touched on a few of them: environment and religious studies. So how would you define it if you were going to define it?
If I may, I think I would define it as a school that is faith-centered. What I mean by that is that faith-centered can manifest in many different ways. For some schools, it'll manifest, as you mentioned with Catholic schools, as secular studies, and you add on a religious studies component.
So
in other schools, you have this environment, right? You have prayer in the morning, you have congregational prayer in the afternoon, you have teachers who are trying to impart a sense of what it means to be Muslim. So this can manifest in many different ways, but what defines an Islamic school or a faith-based school is a school that is informed by the values, the traditions, the perspectives of their faith.
So just give us a sort of ideal scenario. As students will walk in on Monday morning, how would he spend or she spends that day, and will come out, and then from your research will say, yep, that will take all the ticks. So that before we get to the break.
Absolutely. So I used the word tarbiyah earlier.
Perfect.
So every Islamic school would say, just about every Islamic school I can imagine would say, one of our main goals is to impart tarbiyah. My question to them is, what does tarbiyah mean for you? I'm not going to define it. I don't think any one of us can define what it should look like. But each school and each teacher who works in a school, Muslim or not Muslim, should be asking themselves, what does tarbiyah look like in my classroom, in my school, with my students, for me? And if that's a concept that's rooted in Islam, then that has to be an essential thing that we're thinking about as parents, as teachers, as school leaders constantly, of how are we imparting tarbiyah? So a classic example would be a child misbehaves in school, in their classroom.
Very important.
Right? You hit the child, you scold the child, you yell at the child, you put the child into detention. You have to ask yourself whether you consider that tarbiyah or not. Right? Again, I'm not going to define it. But the big question is we can't just pull ways of managing behavior ourselves and assume that this is in line with our understanding of Islam.
Okay, so tarbiyah is one, and the rest of it is that what other elements you want to have during the day for the thing. So the pray is part of the tarbiyah?
Absolutely, but I think, see, one of the challenges for Islamic schools is we get caught up in the outward aspects
Yeah.
of faith,
Yeah.
right? So if you mentioned before we started, if you memorize Juz Amma,
Yes.
would you have achieved what the Islamic school had intended?
Right.
But if you memorize Juz Amma, and if you pray Dhuhr, but you lie to your parents,
Yes.
did the Islamic school
Okay.
achieve what it had intended?
Yep. So
Right.
the complete tarbiyah.
The complete tarbiyah,
Yeah.
right?
The complete tarbiyah from A to Z.
and I think that's what Islamic schools are striving for.
Okay. And that's what your research or your training and your workshops through the center is trying to, or we hope that that will bring the training
Well,
forward.
I think one of the unique things of our center is we're not just doing research on Islamic schools,
Yep.
but we're trying to do research with Islamic schools.
Okay.
In a way, in partnership,
Collaborative.
to help the growth of Islamic schools through the research we see in the latest research in education.
Perfect. I will take a break because then the people will go and have a bit of a drink as we are having a bit of a drink, and then we come back to finish more of this topic. We go to a break with the Almos Kebab sponsorship video, and we'll get back to you. So stay tuned, and I can promise you it will be a very, very informative night with Professor Muhammad Abdullah and Dr. Nadeem Momon.
Assalamu alaikum, this is my business, Almos Kebabs. We've been here for 4 years now. We're located on Marion Road, 489 Marion Road, South Plimpton. We sell doner kebabs, chicken, lamb, falafel, hot dogs, ABs, snack packs, everything. Come down, enjoy, and please support Salam TV.
رمضان كريم 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 شهر عظيم 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 رمضان كريم 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 شهر عظيم 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 قم للعبادة تلقى السعادة قم للعبادة تلقى السعادة تلقى السعادة تلقى النعيم رمضان زمان البركات رمضان زمان الحسنات رمضان زمان البركات رمضان زمان الحسنات رمضان مجال الصلوات طوبى للنفس بتقواها رمضان كريم كريم كريم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters in Adelaide, South Australia, rest of Australia and the rest of the world, with another episode of the Salam TV, the 17th episode for 1441 Hijri, the initiative by the Islamic Society of South Australia. What an important topic tonight. We are discussing about the future of our kids, the future of our young brothers and sisters in the community, how we prepare them for the rest of their life in the best way after they going to schools, that we actually as a Muslim community own and run, to be honest, because it's our responsibility to run it and to own it. It's independent. It follows the national curriculum, but we are discussing what added the icing on the cake. They might come out excellent with the national curriculum or the curriculum that they are studying, but we want that icing on that cake by having the tarbiyah, having the Islamic teaching, and that's why we send them there and we get them out of there fresh and leaders for our community. Before I continue with my guests and for the night, I just wanted to continue updating you on the government, both federal and state, change of restrictions for the which will affect our community, which is mainly the restriction around the worship places. The state government had announced through the press conference by the Premier on Friday, which followed the national conference by the Prime Minister, that there will be ease of restriction for the worship places, and they opened them for 10 people only. 10 people is now to be allowed with the social distancing, which is 100 feet, 1.5 meter distance between apart from next person, or 4 meters square space per person. And that will be effective from tomorrow if the state commissioner, the police commissioner, will sign off as the director of this estate due to the state of emergency regulation, if he will sign off on these restriction changes. We are at the Islamic Society of South Australia, as you are aware. We are in management of a few masjids here at Marion, where you're getting this telecast, and for Wandana and Marybridge, Mangambia and Whyalla. These restrictions has been the discussion of the management committee over the last 48 hours, with the massive meeting today involving the imams as well. These restrictions had been, the change of these restrictions brought a lot of challenges for our management committee and for the community, how we can administer it and how we can sort of implement it. So as far as of tonight, the announcements from the Islamic Society of South Australia Management Committee that the restrictions or the situation at the masjids to stay closed until further announcements. That decision was not taken lightly. It was taken with heavy heart, but it is for the best of our community, because we need more information, more arrangements to be in place. And more importantly, I just want to update you, there will be a meeting between the imams of our society and the rest of the masjids here in Adelaide with the Premier on Wednesday, including Professor Muhammad Abdullah. And that meeting is very important because we need to have more information from both the state government and the commissioner about what we can do and how we can implement it. Remember, these challenges are a lot, and I will table them through the night for you, so then you can understand where our decision came from. That's about the update about the restrictions, and I'll keep updating you through the episodes. But I will get back to my guest and get more about the topics that we're dealing with tonight, which is the Islamic colleges and Islamic teaching in South Australia and the rest of Australia, from the very important people who are research and knowledge-based, Professor Muhammad Abdullah and Dr. Nadeem. Dr. Nadeem, we touched on the Tarbiyah, and Professor Muhammad Abdullah on the history, and one of the comments came through the Facebook that saying that Tarbiyah goes hand in hand at home and at the school. You can't have one without the other. Two hands will obviously make a loud clap. But at the same time, we cannot discount that most of the time the students actually spend at the school. They might actually do a reverse Tarbiyah if we know. That's why we don't want to lose the future generation, if that's what you can comment on. We established these points, and the identity is my next question. How would the strengthening the students' understanding of Islamic values, Islamic Tarbiyah, will help them to understand their identity as they walk out of the fences of that school?
Yeah, well, thank you. If I may comment on the question of Tarbiyah, both being a responsibility of the school and the parents, I think it's it's even more than just the school and the parents. It's the entire community's responsibility. You know, there is that common proverb, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yep.
Yes, the school is responsible. The fact that a school calls itself Islamic, and the fact that it puts on its vision statement that it's going to attain or achieve certain Islamic values or traits, and it's going to deliver certain Islamic features or outcomes, then it is responsible.
Yeah.
But also the parents play a big responsibility. But even you recall, you know, back home when we grew up as young children back in Muslim majority nations, sometimes the neighbor walking down the streets has a sense of responsibility towards the tarbiyah of the child. Correct?
Yes.
If they see the child misbehaving in the street, then the member of a community feels that I have a responsibility here.
Yes.
So the tarbiyah of a child should not be the sole responsibility of the school only, nor is it the sole responsibility of the parents only. Everybody plays a part. However, when an entity, whether it's an organization, it's a madrasa, it's a school, whatever it may be, now claims and says, I have been established so that I can offer for your children an Islamic education. And I have been established so that I can offer for you and your children Islamic identity or Islamic education or Islamic tarbiyah, then from a Sharia perspective,
Yes.
that entity, whatever entity it may be, a school or a madrasa, is responsible because there is a sense of amana here.
Yes.
The amana or the trust here requires that they fulfill that trust, the trust of achieving or fulfilling the vision for which they were established and for which they actually marketed their school.
Yep.
That's why most parents send their children to Islamic schools, because they believe that these schools will offer them something Islamic.
Yep.
So really, the question is, and it comes back to what Dr. Nadeem was saying earlier, and what you have said, how do we know if the schools have achieved their vision?
Yep.
Now, despite the fact, and I don't mean to be negatively critical here,
Yeah.
despite the fact that Islamic schools over the 30 years have achieved so much, sadly, we have had little research to tell us the extent to which
Yeah.
they have achieved these visions, for example.
Yeah.
And so it is important, from my estimation, it is important, just like in any other institution or any other organization, in order to continue to progress constructively
Yeah.
and in ways that are going to achieve the intended vision, to make it enacted, it is important to learn from the past. It is important to research what is going on so that we can build on the strengths that we have and strengthen the weaknesses or the challenges that we may face.
So this is the amana that you're talking about now from your perspective, because you have the center of Islamic thoughts and education, and you're saying that as a amana that you have to call your center or your field of interest and work, that the community in total, parents, kids, and the education sector and the Islamic education should aspire to have that research element or about to start. It's too late, but never very late. Or so what do they say? Never. We should do it rather than say, okay, too late, I'm not going to do it, sort of things. Better late than never. That's what I'm trying to say. Better late than never. So, so it is about time to get that to be involved and get this research into it. Now we have Dr. Memon is from Canada. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And one of the comments came through to us is that how you compare, or is the situation better in Canada or a different part of the world, or is it something across the globe, the same thing in the Western world, I guess?
It's a good question, and you know, I think in our program at the Center for Islamic Thought, we work with a lot of Islamic schools.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think they gain out of the program is a realization that the challenges we have here in Australia, the successes we have here in Australia and in Islamic schools here, are very similar to those ones in Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, South Africa. It's a global, I mean, Islamic schools that are shaped in this way, not madrasa, but Islamic schools that are formed in this way in Western contexts, like the ones I mentioned, have very similar trajectories. We started around the same time, we have the same sort of achievements and the same challenges. And tarbiyah is one of those ongoing challenges.
So if we are having all these similarities, I'm sure we are sharing the same experience across the globe, and that's probably your center is reaching out for all centers that might be of similar work scope in North America or South Africa, as you said, or the UK. I don't know, sometimes I think the UK have a bit of I mean, you're shaking your head, but I just always think that the UK might have a little bit ahead of us, because they the people there, they were probably established before that. Just because as you said, the identity and the tarbiyah and the education, do you think that we can deliver all of these things and still deliver full curriculum, so that there's no compromise on the time available for the curriculum, the normal curriculum, by overloading the day with these teaching programs? Because this is not going to be cheap on time. They need time. So I need your comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, also, I realize we didn't answer the question on identity, actually.
Yes, that's okay, we'll come back to it, because it's very important. I thought you escaped it for a reason.
No, because there was two things. There was the question on the tarbiyah parents and the school and so forth, and then there was a question on identity. We'll come back to the question on identity, because it's a very important question. If we treat, this is my take on this, and Dr. Nadeem will have his take on this regarding the curriculum. What we have found with a number of schools that we engaged with, in good ways, we've engaged with them, is that if they become restricted by the curriculum, and they don't use it in ways that are innovative to achieve their own vision and their own mission, then it becomes difficult for them to achieve those aspects of the Islamic aspect that we are speaking of, because it becomes an added time and responsibility, and where do we fit it in? And what we have found is that sometimes Islamic schools are conformists, meaning they feel, I have to follow the curriculum to the letter, and there is no room for flexibility. But what experts of curriculum would say, you could actually drive a truck through the curriculum. The curriculum is a framework that allows you to work in ways to achieve the intended aims and vision of your own school. But sometimes what happens, in order to strictly comply with the curriculum, we end up compromising on those other important fundamental features of our unique schools. And that's why it's, as Dr. Nadeem has always said, it's not about the curriculum, there is more to it. The focus is always on the curriculum, and that's why we get stranded and we get strangled. But there is more to it, and I'll leave it to Dr.
And just to build on that, I mean, it's not just about the curriculum, it's about the preparation of our teachers. And how we walk, it's a mindset that you walk into with the school. And I'll give you one example, that if you had an elite private school, independent school here in South Australia that is focused on an arts-based curriculum or an athletics-based curriculum for the next generation of athletes. No one asks those schools whether you're going to manage both these two things. Yet faith-based schools get asked, can you manage both? It's not an either-or scenario.
No, I totally agree, but I wanted you to answer it, because I can tell you from a different perspective, because my daughters both went Islamic and non-Islamic, but I wanted to hear from you. So let's get do you have any research into that? Is that, I mean, you've overviewed that, yes, they are focused on delivering the curriculum and become very regimented in that, rather than expanding, saying, okay, here's the time for the curriculum and this is the time for the tarbiyah, because we're going to be saying tarbiyah as another word for your what's the
Pedagogy.
It's the only technical term we have in
I know,
education, so
I
don't
know.
worry.
I can't say it.
We're
but
not like real doctors.
I know, and I bet you can't say anaesthetist as well.
No.
But before we get too much time, the next thing is that we're just going to talk about the identity, or the next section, identity, and the constraints that might be facing the Islamic schools that not be able to deliver this, including training of the teachers. I will go for a break with the sponsor and come back very shortly. Stay tuned. There will be updates on the restrictions, and there will be the two questions about identity and the constraints for why we don't deliver the Tarbiyah program along the side for the curriculum. Stay tuned.
قلدت ظاهر ما فيهم فبدوت شخصا آخر كي أتفاخر وظننت أنا أني بذلك حزت غنى فوجدت أني خاسر فتلك مظاهر لا 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 نحتاج المال كي نزداد جمالا جوهرنا هنا في القلب تلالا لا لا نرضي الناس بما لا نرضاه لنا حالا ذاك جمالنا يسمو يتعالى أوه 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 كن أنت تزداد جمالا كن أنت تزداد جمالا لا 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 أتقبلهم الناس لست أقلدهم إلا بما يرضيني كي أرضيني سأكون أنا مثلي تماما هذا أنا فقناعتي تكفيني ذاك يقيني لا 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 نحتاج المال كي نزداد جمالا جوهرنا هنا في القلب تلالا لا لا نرضي الناس بما لا نرضاه لنا حالا ذاك جمالنا يسمو يتعالى أوه 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 كن أنت تزداد جمالا
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome back for the 17th episode of Salam TV, the initiative from the Islamic Society of South Australia, coming to you live from Masjid Umar ibn Khattab, Marion, South Australia, or Adelaide, South Australia. We are blessed tonight to have two special guests from the Center of Islamic Thoughts and Education, which is one of the most important establishment in the Muslim community in Australia, not only in South Australia. This is an Australian Center for Islamic Thoughts and Education. It was based in Queensland and moved to South Australia to be affiliated with the University of South Australia. So we are privileged to have them with us here tonight and learn more about the future generations. The video that you just watched or you just seen is from the expansion project of Masjid Abu Bakr al-Siddiq in Wandana. This project is going to cost $500,000. We almost halfway there. The donation has slowed down due to the number of people attending the masjid because of the restrictions, and I'm going to talk about the restrictions. But that should not stop the project. The project should keep going. We are facing a lot of shortage of funding to finish that project. It's $500,000. We already achieved half of it. Please donate generously, and when else that you can donate better than this month, to donate in Ramadan, to be counted in many, many times as a best deeds. If you have zakat, you can donate it through that project. If you have a charity that you want to donate through that project, the bank account is there for the society. Please donate generously. And what else you donate for better than expansion of a masjid where more people will pray. And remember Rasulullah, if he said, if you donate what it's worth, just like that, the people of the date or a space like where small space for the Qatar, then you will have a house in Jannah. You do it in Ramadan, you do it for a masjid, and how much blessing for that cent or a dollar that you're going to put in that account. So please donate generously and do the best deeds in this month. I get back to you about the restrictions. I don't want to delay more of the discussions. So Professor Muhammad Abdullah, we were going to talk about the identity and how this tarbiyah or program that will be delivered in Islamic schools alongside the curriculum will enforce and enhance the sense of identity for these students when they come out once they walk out of the fence.
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. So I'm going to answer it based on two things, some of the research and some of the experience I had with young people. So over the last, I would say maybe 8 to 10 years, I have been running a program called Applied Islam for young Australian Muslims aged 13 to about 18 in Queensland, South Australia. I did in Victoria, in New South Wales, and so forth. An element of Applied Islam was called Who Am I? Islam, Culture and Identity. And what I have found is that there are a number of issues that if not addressed, then young people would suffer from an identity crisis. And these things are related to history of Islam. So if there is no clarity, if the history of Islam is not contextualized for these young people, if they're unable to make sense of it in their daily lives, then that is a problem. Secondly, there are theological issues that young people struggle and face if they are not explained well to them, not emotionally, but rationally and scientifically also, then they will struggle. Case in point, say Islam's position on evolution, for example, the theory of evolution. But also there are socio-political issues that they struggle with, and if they don't find reasonable answers for, then that impacts their own identity formation. For example, issues to do with the khilafat, the caliphate, or issues to do with jihad, or issues to do with fighting in the name of Islam, terrorism, or groups like ISIS and ISIL, issues to do with democracy, issues to do with governance. Now these are fundamentally important issues for young people. If institutions, whether these institutions is the masjid or the Islamic school or the madrasa, brush aside these issues or skim through them or don't address them intelligently, then what you end up having is a young person graduating from these schools or these institutions with a huge vacuum that needs to be filled. And so they come out the other end with an identity crisis. And that needs to be addressed. And so one of the biggest challenges of Islamic schools that we have found is that despite the fact that they have some very excellent teachers, and students tell us that they love their Islamic studies teachers, they love their Islamic schools, but these significantly important issues, whether the historical, the theological, the socio-economic, political issues, have not been addressed properly, right? They haven't been given the good groundings. And so what we have found, sorry to just finish, what we have found, especially at the senior level, because at the primary school level you can engage with young people in issues. Now when they are grade 9 onwards, the mind is ticking. They want to know. They go into the biology classroom and there is always constant advancement in the study of biology. There is also always constant advancement in the physics class. The question that we need to ask is this happening in Islamic studies teachings?
Yeah.
And what we have found, again, this is where empirical evidence comes in, because we cannot talk about these things anecdotally just because we heard of it. No,
That's
we
right.
have to understand
Yes.
in order to improve. So what we have found from extensive research with young people in Islamic schools, grade 9 onwards, is that they're not engaged in these issues,
Yeah.
or these issues are not being addressed.
Yeah.
And so they find a sense of thirst. The tragedy is, if we are unable to fill this vacuum
Yes.
in these schools or in the masjid or in the madrasa, then where do you think they are going to go and look for these things?
On Chef Google.
Which is very dangerous.
That's right.
Which is
So
very
I'm
dangerous.
just trying, talking to you, it gets my mind racing, not only the kids racing, and the viewers are really engaging with this. And thank you very much. You sending a lot of questions and messages. Just as you were talking, because you gave the history first, that they all started in between the 70s and the 80s. So they probably and expanded exponentially
Well, 83 really.
and from the 2000, and then we hit, as you said, 2001 is where terrorism and all this negativity came to, and the stigmata for our community came along in the history. And you think that, or you're saying that the research saying that there are the schools are brushing off these topics of talking about them, the three elements. What did you say?
Well, there's the historical, theological,
and
socio-economic, political issues. Yes.
the three elements. Do you think that because they, as you said, that maybe they're not equipped to discuss it, or it is because as a community, I kept saying it for a long time, since September the 11th, 2001. We face challenges through the community, through the masjids, through the leadership in the community that we never faced before, and we had to learn on the job sort of things. But for the school, we can't let that go. So if there is an element that we need to know why they're brushing it off. Is it part because they're not equipped to do it, they don't have time to do it, or they thought if they do it and they don't do it well because they're not experienced enough with it, the backlash of it is even worse. Do you have a research on that? Why
there
is
are
it done?
multiple reasons why,
Right.
and I'll speak about few, and then you can jump in, talk about maybe the pedagogy. So there are a number of reasons, and we can't point the finger at one.
No.
We can't say it's the teacher's
No.
fault. We can't say that,
No.
because there are some exceptional teachers. But I can tell you for a fact, with all the schools that we have engaged with, the research we've done with the schools, there is lack of resources when it comes to the Islamic. So
Okay.
resources is an issue.
Okay. Resources,
Time.
money and time, or both?
Resources, even basic things such as a decent library
Okay.
or a decent resources, whether they are electronic or hard copy, so that there are problems with resources. So often, not only the teachers, the students, but the teachers make that complaint that Islamic schools are happy to spend a lot of money on resources for everything else, but not for the teaching of for Islamic studies.
Right.
That's one. Then you have also the other issue of time allocation.
Yep.
Often it's 1 hour per week or 2 hours per week. If you're lucky, you might get 1 hour per day for an Islamic studies classroom.
Yep.
The third problem is that Islamic studies is lumped into one big box. And we
Yes.
thought Islamic studies, one person can teach Islamic studies. Islamic studies, it's like saying humanities and social sciences.
Yep.
In Islamic studies, you have history, you have fiqh, you have Quran, you have hadith, and so forth. And we schools need to rise up for the occasion and
Right.
invest in people who can teach these specialized areas.
Yeah.
Right, and not feel that this is all one area that one teacher can look after.
Right.
The other issue is sometimes Islamic studies classes are very large. In one very old Islamic school that we looked at, they had 80 students in one class. And when I asked, why is that the case? Why do you have, I'm asking the students, why you have 80 students in the class?
Yeah.
They said because Islamic studies is seen as an add-on. It's a bludge class. and then when there is nothing else, we lump all the students together.
Yeah.
So these are multiple issues, but this is not the fundamental issue. I think there is fundamentally the entire language perhaps in the school, the meta language, the pedagogy that you may want to touch on, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the way it's also taught is that we teach Islamic studies in a way that's not responsive
Yeah.
to the questions that students bring to classrooms.
Okay.
So students, for example, will go to a class, they'll go to math class,
Yeah.
and or the business class, they're in a business class,
Yeah.
and they'll learn that interest is an essential part of the way that our economy works.
Yes.
They go to their Islamic studies teacher and they find out that it's impermissible in Islam.
Correct.
There's no connection between the two.
No.
The Islamic studies teacher and the business studies teacher need to approach this in a way
Yeah.
that responds to the students,
Yeah.
that gives them a way of thinking this through, because there is a conversation happening.
Yeah.
that's
So,
wrong.
so that word that you were saying that, and that's part of the identity. That funny word that you
Pedagogy.
use. That's the one. So you want to have that. Say, if they talk about physics, they don't say, okay, it's only that Newton had invented these things, but there are Muslims scientists in the past that they are paved the way for Newton to come up with this, and it's not. I mean, we understand that Newton he watched that apple falling and then drafted that law of gravity or something. But before that, he was interested in all sort of physics, and that's where the work from Muslim scientists is there. Yes, it dried up during certain times, but we now need to rekindle it and actually warm it up and even roar it.
And it's not just a pulling back of Islamic civilizations of the past, but it's
No.
also the contemporary conversations
Yeah.
that our scholars are in.
That's right.
Around,
That's right.
transplant, for example.
That's right.
I mean, we're having conversation. Our scholars have dealt with these issues.
That's right.
But they're not necessarily being responsive to the questions that students bring to the classroom.
That's right, and that's what to bring because the other element that Professor was saying that one class or two classes a week is not. It might be working in Iraq. When I was in Iraq, we had one class for Deen a week because we had, as we bring the comment from one of the listeners or the viewers that was saying that the family should bear the responsibility as well, and we said that it is we're not discounting that, but in the Middle East or the rest of or in a Muslim country, as he said, the neighbors teach you, the house teach you, it used to be even the media teach you more about Islamic things. The masjids are more in numbers, so one class a week may be okay in that environment because the environment is fully enriched. But in a community like here, the Islamic colleges or Islamic schools need to be a very important institution for our kids to teach them that deen. Is that what you're trying to say, Professor?
Yeah, well, absolutely. And when we talk about, say, the tarbiyah, it's not only what is instructed.
Yes.
It's what's enacted throughout the school. So the principal, the teachers, the leaders, the person in the canteen, they all need to enact those Islamic principles and values that we want to see in the children.
Yeah.
What we need to realize is that the philosophy of education in Islam is not about transmission of knowledge. It's not just transmission of information. It's transformation of the individual. Now, transformation does not happen through instruction only.
No.
It will never happen through instruction,
Yeah.
right? Transformation will never happen if all the emphasis or if most of the emphasis is on academic performance.
Yeah.
Transformation of the learner or the child will not happen if the emphasis is all on the rational faculty, on the academics, on the intellectual.
Yeah.
And as Dr. Nadeem mentioned earlier, fundamentally, the philosophy of education in Islam is that we focus on the intellect, the physical, and the spiritual. The soul plays a huge role in our tradition, al-ruh, al-nafs. In most models of schooling, the soul or the ruh has no place. Has no place. So how do we bring that balance back? And it's not only instruction. You could have all the excellent instruction in the school, but if it's not enacted, if the child or the learner sees that the teacher's behavior or the principal's behavior or the bus driver's behavior is not in line with the vision. And that's why, how do we enact those visions?
Yeah.
How do we make them actually, how do we transfer them so they are living documents and not just words? And we're not saying this, it's an easy task. We're not saying at all it's an easy task. But at the same time, we are arguing that there has to be an engagement, a real, genuine engagement with what we are doing with schools or what is happening in schools, and try to learn from the positive but also from the challenges and see, well, how can we improve? How can we move forward?
So, brothers and sisters, what a beautiful discussion. It's just very important topic, because this is part of, or most important part in our life as Muslims, is that our kids, our young generation, that they are coming to lead and to look after us afterwards when we grow old, and to continue the Islamic traditions through their life, and they live by it, and generate new families like that. The professor Professor Muhammad Abdullah and Dr. Nadeem gave us very, very interesting overview about all the aspects of Islamic schoolings in Australia, and how we can aspire as a community to deliver the best education for our kids, from both academic curriculum and the Islamic curriculum, through the tarbiyah and through involvement with the kids as amana, to bring them up as useful Muslim community members and Australian citizens. A lot of listeners and viewers, they were saying that the family, or where they grow up and at home is important. So we touched on the home environment is very important. Then the Islamic school. Then we have the masjids, and we have the research fellows and experts like Professor Muhammad Abdullah, Dr. Nadeem. These are the fourth pillars in Islamic education that we have: is the house or home, the masjids, the schools, and the researchers trying to get the best for our kids, how they go and navigate life through their growing up. I have to end it here, unfortunately. I don't have time. I mean, we can be here for longer time. I will have 2 things or 3 things to do for the night. The first one is to give you more about the updates. As I said, the federal government and the state government came up with a change of restrictions, especially affecting the worship places, including the masjids, and they allowed the masjids to open for 10 people. These changes of restrictions brought up more challenges for us as the Islamic Society of South Australia, as management for our masjids, and we manage Marion, Wandana, Whyalla, Mount Gambier, and Murray Bridge. These challenges are really unique and special for our community. They are not without really hard way to implement. I will go through that. What we've been doing over the last 48 hours. We've been extensively in consultation with all managers of masjids in Adelaide, and the scholars and the imams and the community members, and more important, the management committee. We came up with a decision, a heavy-hearted decision, to keep the status as it is, closed for the time being for the masjids, until we get further clarification on the situation of the restrictions. We have the imams meeting the premier on Wednesday. That meeting is very important. There will be more information coming out of it, and more discussion coming out of it with the authorities, as in the premier and the managers or the coordinator of the state. And then we'll get more and more discussion about how we can address these challenges. The few challenges that we can foresee is that who are the 10s that will pray, how can we pray with the safe distance between the people, the worshippers. The 1.5 meters should be observed and 4 meters square per person as a personal bubble. How we can address the jama'ah, how we can address the tracking, how we can address that the people coming and clean the place after they pray, how we can open and close the masjid, who is going to be responsible for the administration of this. It's the huge tasks and challenges that came up with the change of restrictions, but please, we will keep you informed. We keep you informed at all platforms through the WhatsApp platform 0447724772. Please download it and activate it so you can be updated constantly from the Islamic Society of South Australia, or follow our Facebook page or Salam TV, or try to ring us to get the updated messages about the change of restrictions in regard to the masjid and when we're going to be able to get back to pray and how we're going to do it. These changes will be addressed in a due course, but for the time being, the masjid will stay closed until further clarification and further updates. Professor Abdullah, you are with us tonight, and our hearts is still Ramadan hearts, and we want it to be softened. And you, who is better than you to give us 5 minutes before the hadith of the night, and then we'll get the last words after the hadith video. So 5 minutes for you with the softening of the heart, Ramadan hadith, inshallah.
جزاك الله خير. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله ما بعد. Well, Ramadan, the entire purpose of Ramadan is to give us an opportunity to refine our souls. And there are a number of factors usually that hinder us from trying to work on our souls and refine our souls. One of those, of course, is Shaitan himself, who tries to always detract us. And that's why in the month of Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ says that the giant shayateen are chained. And so that is one influence that is less on us to, therefore Allah is making it easier for us to work on our souls. But also the nafs, our inner desires and egos can be a fundamental source of taking us away from purification of ourselves. And that is why through the fasting, when we fast and abstain from eating and drinking through the day, we are training ourselves. We're undergoing a sense of discipline so that we may nurture that soul. And so there can be no better opportunity than the month of Ramadan to do so. In one hadith, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, every now and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends opportunities, nafahat. Nafahat, it's like breeze that comes your way, فَتَعَرَّضُوا لَهَا. So expose yourself to these opportunities and take of them as much as you can. And Ramadan is one of those opportunities where we need to expose ourselves fully to Ramadan so that we, inshallah ta'ala, can soften our own hearts, but also can discipline our own souls. In the only time in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes 11 consecutive oaths is in Surah Al-Shams. Now remember, when Allah ta'ala takes an oath in the Quran, it means what follows is a very important piece of news. They say if there is a qasam, it's followed by a khabar. And Allah in different places, tabaraka wa ta'ala, takes qasam, takes an oath. Shams, for example, by the sun, by the moon, etc. And the only time he takes 11 times qasam, consecutive, is in Surah Al-Shams, when he swears 11 times and then he gives us the khabar. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Successful are those who purify their souls. And they fail those who don't purify it. So the purification of the self and the softening of the heart is fundamental to Islam. And very much in line with the discussion about Islamic schools, it's not only about the outward, the external, but it's more importantly, it's the inward. As one of the contemporary scholars and philosophers said, the heart of Islam is the Islam of the heart. Right? The heart needs to be submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He spoke about the Ramadan, He said, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُم. Why? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Fast has been prescribed upon you, just like it was prescribed on those before you, so that you may attain taqwa. And taqwa is to be fully aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anytime and every time. Taqwa means that when you are about to transgress the limits of Allah, either because of the temptations of the nafs or the delusions of the shaitan, then you quickly remember and recall that Allah is watching and Allah is hearing, so you stop.
Yep.
It's like the example of a person who's about to go through a red traffic light and he or she are excessively tired. Just imagine yourself 3 a.m. in the morning, you just finished a night shift, you're so tired. And I say this because I've been through that when I was undergraduate student. I used to do a night graveyard shift, work from 7 to 4 in the morning, and then drive home. Sometimes I don't know how I got home. But imagine you are so tired that morning, and you came to a traffic light, and it's red, and you just want to go through because you can't wait any longer. You look to your right and you look to your left, and there are no cars, there are no humans, and maybe there are no jinn at the time, right?
Yeah.
And you're tempted now to cross the red traffic light. You're tempted to go through it because you think nobody's there to see you. And just when you put your foot on the accelerator to go through the traffic light, you saw the camera, the red light camera. And so you stop. Why? Because that's taqwa.
Yes.
That is taqwa. It's when you are about to transgress the limits, when there is pressure on you, whatever type of pressure, nafs or shaitan or dunya, and you're about to transgress that limit. And then you are aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if we come out of Ramadan with this state of being, of this state of awareness, then we have succeeded and achieved the true meaning and significance of Ramadan.
Yep.
Right? Because in the other hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, for example, that there might be some people who fast and they get nothing of their fast but hunger. And there are some people who stand up in qiyam and taraweeh and they will get nothing from it but fatigue and tiredness. رب صائم ليس له من صيامه إلا الجوع والعطش ورب قائم ليس له من قيامه إلا التعب. Why? Because it's not about that. It's not about starvation. We may end up starving ourselves from eating and drinking but not getting the real benefit.
Yeah.
It's not about fatigue. It's not just being fatigued and being tired, but it's what am I getting out of it? And so, given that the last 10 nights of Ramadan are approaching, we should all refocus.
Yeah.
We all need to really then think about what is the most important thing that I need to be doing in the next 10 nights. Because if COVID-19 taught us one thing, it is that dunya is so uncertain.
Yes.
This life is so uncertain.
Yes.
And circumstances could change suddenly overnight without notice. And so anyone who thinks that they may be alive to fast another Ramadan, they need to rethink that. We don't know if we will be alive again next year for Ramadan.
Yeah.
And we should feel that this is my only Ramadan that I have. These are the last few days that I have. And if they are the last few days that we have in Ramadan, how will we use them? One Hakim of the past, a wise man of the past, he said, "Ad-dunya thalathatu ayyam." Dunya is 3 days only. Dunya is 3 days. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Yesterday is gone, and you can't bring it back. And tomorrow is not guaranteed.
Yes.
So, in essence, how many days do we have?
Today.
It's only today. Honestly, if we feel like this, if we think like that I have a day, then we'll become more grateful for the bounties that we have. We become more appreciative for the time we have. We will not take time and spare time and health for granted. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Ni'matan kathirun maghbunun fi kathirun min nas maghbunun fiha kathirun min nas as-sihhatu wal faragh." two bounties many people take for granted: spare time and health, meaning they don't use them properly. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these blessed nights, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the coming nights of Ramadan to help me and to help you and to help each one of us and all the listeners to refocus and to really prioritize and think about what is it that matters most. And if all I have is one day, then how will I utilize that day, right? And if I don't know if I'm going to be here next Ramadan, then what will I do in the next 10 nights?
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Professor Muhammad Abdullah always soften the heart. The hardest heart will soften when listening to him. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him the barakah and all the rewards on behalf of everybody who's listening to him tonight and will listen to him in the future. We go to the hadith of the night, and then we get him to as well comment a couple of words about it before we finish the episodes with some words from final words from the guest and further update on the restriction changes.
عن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: ألا أدلك على أبواب الخير؟ الصوم جنة والصدقة تطفئ الخطيئة كما يطفئ الماء النار وصلاة الرجل من جوف الليل. Mu'adh bin Jabal, may Allah be pleased with him, said that the Prophet of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Shall I not guide you to the doors of good? Fasting is a shield, and charity extinguishes sins, like water extinguishes fire, and a man praying in depths of the night."
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters in Adelaide, South Australia, and the rest of the world. We'll come back at the 17th episode of 1441 Hijri, Salam TV, the initiative from the Islamic Society of South Australia. We're coming to the closing part of this episode. What a beautiful hadith we just had, and Professor Muhammad Abdullah, we can't let him go without expanding more about the hadith, so I've got 2 minutes grace from him, and he will be enlightening us more about the hadith.
Professor. The hadith عن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: ألا أدلك على أبواب الخير؟ الصوم جنة والصدقة تطفئ الخطيئة كما يطفئ الماء النار وصلاة الرجل من جوف الليل. Hadith رواه الترمذي. In this hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is giving advice not only to his immediate companions but to all of us.
Yeah.
And because Rasulullah sallam, he was haris alaykum.
Yeah.
He has, that's how Allah describes him in the Quran. Harisun alaykum. He had so much concern for you.
Yeah.
And so he always gave advice for the best type of advice so that we may succeed not only in this world but also more importantly in the next world. And in this nasiha, in this advice, he says, shall I guide you? Shall I advise you about the gate of all goodness?
Yep.
You know, that is, if you were to do these things, this will lead you to all sorts of goodness. As-sawmu junnah. He said fasting is junnah. Junnah means protection. It's a protection against the things that I was just talking about before, against your own nafs, against desires, against shaitan.
Yep.
But it's also fasting is junnah. It's a protection against the punishment in the hereafter, inshallah ta'ala. And sadaqah, charity, extinguishes sin like water extinguishes fire. In other words, he's encouraging us to give more sadaqah. Sadaqah is a testimony, the ulama say sadaqah is a testimony to one's sidq of iman, to one's truthfulness of iman. Because this is sadaqah and sidq refer to the same thing, truthfulness. So this is the month of Ramadan. We should take advantage of this month and to give sadaqah to the orphans and the needy and the people who are less fortunate than us. وَصَلَاةُ الرَّجُلِ مِنْ جَوْفِ اللَّيْلِ, and a person's prayer in the midst of the night, which is very tough on the nafs. But the ulama say one of the best ways to engender ikhlas, sincerity in ourselves, is to pray at night when all others are asleep. because there's no room for show off.
Yep.
Sometimes when we give sadaqah, there is room for show off. Sometimes when we're fasting in the presence of people, there is room for ostentation and show off and ujub. But if you get up at night, the ulama say get up at night like a thief. Nobody is to be aware. And you pray tahajjud. Even if it's 2 rak'at, between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the greatest way to knock on the doors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's one of the greatest ways of engendering and nurturing ikhlas or sincerity in us.
Jazakallah khair, Professor Muhammad Abdullah, for what beautiful words. Now, Dr. Nadeem, we need to get the final words from you. But before you get the final word, I just want to have, I've said it in the episodes that we had Professor Muhammad Abdullah, and again with the 2 episodes that were discussing Islamic schooling. I really, and for me, because I love research, and I missed on time, but it's not too late, and I might come back to study through the Center of Islamic Thoughts and Education one day, to take some extracurricular for me, because it's an important subject, and I'm really started to develop some interest in it. But we discussed that in the episode with Professor Muhammad Abdullah, that your center takes undergraduates, not only people for masters or PhD. You take undergraduates, and they can do it after year 12 as part of a minor or an elective subject through their university. So this is another call from a person, a member of the community that have an amana, that I want to say it to the parents who are watching us tonight, or the young guys that they are watching us tonight. If you have a spare time, and this is just like a sport you're taking, or a friendship, a new friendship that you are engaging in, take this opportunity and knock on the door on the Center of Islamic Thoughts and Education, and get into their program of an undergraduate program, because that will equip you. That's just, you meet these great scholars in that center to learn from that as a way forward from there. So just sum up tonight for us, Dr. Nadeem, so then we can finish it off.
Sure. I think we've spoken a lot about Islamic schools and some of the challenges, but I don't want to take away from the significant strides that Islamic schools have made over the past 40 years.
Yep.
I think we would all agree that we've made significant headway. But at the same time, I think part of this conversation that we've had this evening is an acknowledgement, it's a constructive criticism of the types of things we can be doing for ongoing growth.
Yep.
And I think we as a community, we have an opportunity.
Yep.
COVID is an opportunity, and as is our Islamic schools an opportunity.
Yes.
And this is an opportunity for reflection.
Yep.
To think about, inshallah, when schools reopen, and as they are reopening, what are we going to do differently?
Yep.
How are Islamic schools going to continue to build on the legacy, the richness of our tradition of teaching and learning,
Right.
that are going to make our schools a special place? So I think, to take tonight's conversation as a beginning to looking back at our vision statements of our schools,
Yep.
and asking ourselves, as somebody mentioned in the comments, parents are just as much part of this puzzle.
Yep.
So are the students, so are the school leaders, and as are the educators. What are we doing as a community to look back at that vision statement of our schools and asking ourselves, how are we achieving it, and what can we be doing more?
Better. Okay. Wonderful last wise words, and thank you very much, Professor Muhammad Abdullah, for joining us for special episodes about schooling and about the future generation. Thank you very much, Dr. Nadeem Maimoon, about enlightening us about what we're dealing with and what's for the future. More updates about the restrictions, changes of restrictions. As I said, the masjids will stay closed for the time being until further notice from the Islamic Society of South Australia and the Management Committee, as we are navigating through the challenges that have been imposed on us as a Management Committee and on the community as well, how to navigate through the ease of restrictions and what are the real rules about it. There will be a meeting on Wednesday And remember these changes that we will implement, trying to implement, and the challenges that we're trying to overcome and address will be with us for a long time. So it's not only for the 10 people that we are allowed now, it will be increased to 20 in the next stage and then goes to 100. So these numbers are still limiting and still needs to be addressed and still need to be managed, and we need to go through these issues and these points one by one until we get it right, because we really don't want to fail as a community, small community, and as the wider community. We don't want to fail you in poorly managing it. We don't want to fail the wider community, because we are part of it. We need to play it safe, and we are meeting with the governments. We're continually assessing the situation. We keep you updated. Stay tuned on our Facebook page, on WhatsApp information platform 04-4772-4772, or call us on 8374-2280, or follow the Salam TV, which comes to you every night, 8 o'clock p.m. from the Islamic Society of South Australia. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakum Allah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.